Hi guys, my name is Sean. I'm a houseplant enthusiast from Jakarta, Indonesia. So I finally reached 20,000 subscribers in this channel in a very short amount of time. So I really want to thank you guys for subscribing, for liking and commenting and supporting this channel, because it is something that I'm very passionate about, and I feel very lucky. And in today's episode, I'm going to discuss about 10 plants here that are my very first plants. They've taught me a lot of plant lessons in terms of care and propagation, as well as how to become a better person. So in this video, I will share with you the species. Hopefully you'll discover something cool over here, their care, and also some of my philosophies about plant care. So yeah, let's get started. So this first plant that is in my hand, this is one of the propagates of Celia, my Monstera. I know I repeat this a lot, but she was actually my first ever plant that I kept alive, and the whole reason why I'm in this plant game. I got this Monstera for my photo studio, and for selfish purposes, I wanted to use it for my photo shoot. So it thrived there for about a year. It kept growing, and I finally looked up propagation. And I did it wrong. I cut it on the patio instead of having a node. And I waited, 5 to 6 weeks, and nothing happened. So then I looked it up and I tried again with the node this time, and it worked. And that opened up the whole game for me, because I realized that, actually with proper research, you can keep any plants alive and you can multiply them. So propagation for me is a very important part of plant care, because we want a bushier plant, we want more plants, and we want plants that we can share with other people. So I've actually shown you Celia in one of my previous videos in my balcony tour. I've cut so many of her up, and this is actually one of the propagates. And over here, actually, I've cut one more growth point here. I believe it was 3 leaves that I cut off that I gave to someone else. And this has pushed out even more leaves here. It's amazing, and it's got splits, fenestrations. So this plant is actually really fast growing and easy to care for. Celia is actually still living upstairs in my balcony, but I did cut her up a lot more. So she's actually putting out a lot of new vines still today, and I'm going to keep sharing her with other people and having her around the home. With Monsteras, you want to give them bright indirect light. They can take medium light, and you want to water them only when their soil is bone dry. They cannot appreciate overwatering. Of course, more light means faster growth. And you want to fertilize them lightly, and they do burn in direct sunlight, so you want to be mindful of that. And I know that the variegated version of this plant is so popular, but I highly recommend picking up one of the green forms first to practice before you get your variegated plants. So yeah. And next I'm going to talk about this Christmas or Thanksgiving cactus. I don't really know the exact species ID, but I know that there are different species. It's in the Schlumbergera family. I don't know if I butchered that. It sounds German. It didn't sound Latin to me. But I got this from a tiny little plant. I'm gonna put on the screen what it looked like before. And oh my God, it was so fascinating because the growth points are just so cute. They look like little crab claws like trying to stick out of the branch. And they actually do branch out, which is really fascinating. And they're very resilient, very easy to care for, very forgiving. Do give them bright indirect light. This is the variegated version. They do come in all green. But if you want the variegation to come through, you need to give them some direct sunlight. So I had this in a west-facing window for a very long time. And I actually figured, I grew it from a tiny little plant until it's about, 5 or 6 more leaves. And I decided to just pluck it off, wait for it to callus over, and stick it back into the soil. That's also one of my first propagation experience with jungle cacti, because this is what it is. This is a jungle cactus. And it just grew. There's actually 3 plants living in this pot now from the one that I had before. And I can keep propagating this actually. In fact, I will do that. I haven't found the time to do it. But it's so beautiful, and they do bloom around Christmas or Thanksgiving. Although I'm not sure in my tropical region if they will bloom or not. They haven't bloomed for me yet, but again, I've only had this for about a year. So yeah, let's see how this does. But it's very easy to care for, very forgiving. Again, you want to water it when it's dry, the soil is dry, or when I don't know if this is the leaves, when they feel a bit limp. And yeah, this is a very easy plant to have. I highly recommend it. And next up here, we have the Dischidia Oiantha. Oiantha Variegata, I don't know how to pronounce the name. So this is the variegated form, and actually this was a rescue. I had to rescue actually most of these had to be rescued. Here's the thing, I actually bought most of my plants cheap and from questionable online sellers. And the fact that I didn't get healthy plants to begin with, it means that I had to really look into their care, and sometimes I have to propagate them and start over, or sometimes to repot them and figure out the watering. And this is definitely one of the more difficult ones that I need to do that for. So I'm very, very thankful for all these plant rescue. And I got all of these actually at a very affordable price. Most of them were from Tokopedia. And this was before the plant craze, so the prices were actually okay. And with this one, actually, they do want bright indirect light. If you give them some direct sunlight, they can take it. And I did notice these all white vines that show up here. This is actually really bad. I used to cut them off, but I haven't found time to do that lately. And basically, when you cut them back, it will start putting out, hopefully green leaves from where you cut it. And for the way that you will care for it is to, again, give them bright indirect light. Some direct is fine. I figured that if actually I stick them back into like a medium light, it may stop giving me these very variegated white leaves. And you don't want to overwater it. It will not forgive you if you overwater it. You can actually feel the leaves are very succulent. They're like peperomias. And if it's full and it feels thick, do not water it. It cannot forgive you if you overwater it. So this is a very beautiful plant to have. It's actually a very slow growing plant. This is actually all the growth that I had in 1 year. I did have some propagates. I took a few of the longer vines and I cut it and I propagated very successfully with 100% success rate. So this is a very, very cool plant to have, and I can't wait for it to get really big. All right, so next up we have this Schefflera. And this is also known as Wali Wongso in Indonesia. I don't really like the local name of it. It sounds a little bit weird. But this is the variegated form, which means that it actually appreciates very bright light. I give this actually partial sun or dappled direct sunlight. This had scale before at some point because I think when you give it low light, it's a little bit stressed out and used to grow so slowly. I got this as a tiny plant. It was actually probably only about this tall. And now it grew within 1 year into this size. And it's given me multiple branches now too. I see one here. Actually, I just see the one branch. And they actually put out these tiny leaves from the growth point, like little palm, like reaching out, and they will expand in size. They're like baby tiny infant high fives, which I really like. These are a delight to have, relatively easy to care for. Like I said, I had battled scale with this before, but I treated it and the scale hasn't come back. So it's actually very happy. I do water this almost every day. It's because it's in terracotta pot and a porous soil, and it's also living outside in direct sunlight. So it's a very thirsty plant in that condition. And the variegation, I've noticed that if you stick them in a medium light where it's not bright enough, it will give you green leaves. So just be mindful that to get this variegation, you definitely need to stick them somewhere bright. Other than that, they're very easy to care for houseplants. I haven't propagated these yet, but I know that they can be propagated by stem cuttings. Okay, and over here we have the Aglaonema Pictum Tricolor. I got this actually when it was a bit expensive. I think I paid like 750,000 for this, and I know the prices has gone down quite a lot for this here in Indonesia. I know that it's in quite high demand elsewhere, and this is actually endemic here to Indonesia. So within the short period of time, I think people were growing them very quickly, and that's why the prices dropped here locally. But unfortunately, in overseas, the prices did go up recently. I give this one a terracotta pot and a very fast draining soil. And in the past, I had this indoors where I had to moisture probe them every 2 to 3 days. And I only water it when it's bone dry. All aglaonemas cannot take overwatering. They would give you yellow leaves and it would just fall off and die if you give them too much water. And it can take some direct sunlight, surprisingly, for an aglaonema. And it seems to appreciate it. And actually what you're seeing right here is actually the baby. I don't know if you can see here, there's a main stem here that I cut off. Actually, it was a one-leggy aglaonema plant before, and it just kept getting longer and longer. I got it as a leggy plant, which means that it's actually an older plant, which I'm very thankful for, because what happened within 1 year period is that, well, the first 6 months, it just kept growing leaves slowly, and then it started putting out these buds from down below. I have 4 I counted 4. I think there may be even 5. Yeah, there's 4 right now, babies that grew from underneath the soil, which is amazing. And after the babies have become a little bit more stabilized, I figured that I'm gonna propagate it, so I cut the top off. It's actually my houseplant rescue video where I cut the top off and stuck it into soil. And that cutting is living. It's been in the pot for about a month and a half-ish. And these babies are also still continuously growing. And look, one of them is actually flowering. This is so cute. I normally pluck the flowers off because they will drain energy from the plant, but in this case, I just kind of let it be. Yeah, this is a very cool houseplant and very easy to care for in my condition, and it does well both indoors and outdoors. And I'm so thankful for what it's taught me, which is to let your soil dry out between watering. So this is one of my very first plants that actually do moisture probe very religiously, almost every day. And nowadays, this actually live outdoors, and I don't really have to do moisture meter anymore because again, back to my plant lessons about soil and watering. I have kept this plant in the same pot for a year, and look at how many plant material there is, and I'm sure it's got a lot of roots in there, which means that it's going to be a very thirsty plant. Coupled by the fact that it's in terracotta pot, this means that I can safely water this every day when it's outside. So this plant is living outside now. I don't know if I mentioned that 30 seconds ago. So yeah, I do water this every day, and I give it a very bright indirect light outdoors, and it's thriving, as you can see here. When you keep your plants indoors, you definitely want to be more mindful as they will dry slower and it's more prone to overwatering and rot. And over here we have the wax ivy. This is actually one of my faster growing plants. And I can't remember the Latin name, but I'll put it on the screen. It's beautiful. It's like very variegated. It's very succulent-like. And I don't have any issues with this. I have no pest pressures whatsoever, and it just kept growing and growing. They do appreciate brighter light, but they can take medium to bright indirect light, and they can take all the way to dapple direct sunlight. And again, you can actually feel the old leaf and kind of fold it. This one's actually a little bit thirsty because I had it here overnight, and this is a thirsty plant because it's got a lot of, actually this was a bigger plant and I cut a lot of cuttings and propagated it, so it's actually got a lot of roots in there. I know you can't see it. And it's in terracotta pots. I do water these every day as well, and it gets dapple direct sunlight. And I've actually grown a huge pot of this, and I've given it to my aunt. So this is actually all from one cutting. I regrew this basically. It's amazing. All right, so next up, this is a very, very valuable lesson for me. This is a Caladium, and I know it doesn't look so good right now, but hear me out. I'm gonna give you a little bit of history. So I got this plant, and it was dying basically, right? So I had to repot it. I put it in a separate pot, and that pot actually died off, like I lost all the leaves. However, the soil that I dumped away, I was too lazy to throw it out, so I just left it out on my balcony. And within like 3 weeks time, I saw a tiny little growth, and there was a little leaf that came out of it. And this plant came from that tiny little leaf. So that really taught me about the resilience of plants and how we should not throw away a pot or a soil if we think that the plant is dying. So it's worth to hang on to it because again, plants have such strong will to live, and I really respect them for that. So that little tiny plant actually grew really fast, really big indoors in my bedroom. So apparently they can live indoors as well. And with this plant, you want to give them very strong indirect light or even dapple direct sunlight. And some people go as far as say that they can live in full sun. Do not let them dry out completely. Or if you do, don't let them dry out for too long. But more sun equals to more watering. That's my rule. So if you put it in a slightly lower light situation, you want to water it less because otherwise you'll rot. It's got a bulb underneath. And when you put it in lower light, it's going to give you these green leaves. And if you give them brighter light, they're going to give you more whites and bigger leaves. And this actually went into dormancy, which explains why it looks so sad right now. So it came back to the one tiny leaf, it grew into something big, and then it completely died off. And then it grew back up into this giant white leaf. And I actually show it in my balcony tour, I think about 4 to 5 months ago. It even flowered for me. Unfortunately, right now, I think it's going back to decline because I did move it around a little bit. And also, I think it's time to sleep again. I think it wants to rest. So I'm gonna let these leaves die off naturally, and I think they will. And then this will be an empty pot for a few months, and then wait for new growth to emerge. A lot of you guys are asking, what to do with your caladiums that are in dormancy. You basically just keep them, hopefully indoors would be better, or somewhere that's shaded where it doesn't get rained on, because you don't want it to get too wet in here. It might rot the bulb since it's got no leaves to photosynthesize all that water. And when it's time, like I don't know, I give it like 3 to 6 months time. I don't really measure my plants timing. I have too many plants. I just kick it out into the rain and just start watering it, and it will just start growing miraculously back. And usually the new leaves are bigger and stronger than before. So that's how you would care for the caladiums. Yeah. All right, so next up we have the Fiddle leaf fig. This is actually the mini version. When I got it, I didn't know that they had a tiny version of this plant. And it was actually quite small. I think it was probably about like this height. In my experience, fiddle leaf figs are very difficult and they're overrated. This one was actually attacked by scale at some point, and I'm really thankful for that because I learned a lot about pest management from this guy. I bought my first neem oil for this plant, and the scale hasn't come back yet, fortunately, and it's so healthy now. And fiddle leaf figs, actually, they do love direct sunlight, and some would even say full sun, but you do have to train them over a long period of time for them to take full sun, because they can burn up if you move it from a medium light to like full sun directly, immediately, and they don't like to be moved at the same time. And fiddle leaf figs, they want to be dry between watering. They cannot be overwatered. And what else did I fertilize them? I find that fertilizing does help them push out new growth better. And they do put out these fruits from the stem, which is really interesting. It's like these round things. I don't know what the fruits do. If you guys do know, let me comment down below. But it's a beautiful plant, and I'm always going to be thankful for the fiddle leaf fig and how difficult it is to care for. You do need to get all your watering correct. You cannot overwater it, so you need a moisture meter in the beginning. So I'm really thankful for this guy, and I put it outside now where it's getting direct sunlight. And I just kind of water it every 1 to 2 days. Again, I put most of my plants in terracotta pot because I'm an overwaterer. So yeah, and it's a particularly thirsty plant too, in outside and in this condition. All right, oh my God, this is so big. Okay, I hope you don't mind that you can't see my face for the next minute or so. This is a Dracaena marginata, and it's so beautiful. It's gotten really big. This is the variegated form, which means that it actually likes brighter light. It can take direct sunlight to full sun, and it seems to thrive in that. And I got it as a tiny plant. I'm going to show you this guy. I'm like struggling with this. I don't know if you can see me. I got it as a 3 plant, and then I cut one off because I wanted to. I got it in my mouth. I wanted to see what it looks like, because it does branch out where you cut it. It's going to branch out to 3 growth points, which it did. However, I underwatered it, and that growth point, the 3 of them just died off. And I stuck the crown back into soil, and it's still alive now, and it's still growing. So this little one will catch up. And these can get really big and tall. The way that the growth pattern works is that it will keep shedding lower leaves. The lower leaves will always die, and then it will keep pushing out new leaves, new growth points up here. And you can see here that there's actually a really long portion with leaves, which means that it's healthy and it loves that bright light. However, if you give it a lower light or less ideal living conditions, it's going to have only a few leaves on this plant. I noticed that. And it would continue growing upwards. So the way that you know that this plant is healthy is to look at its growth point. As long as it's still pushing out new leaves and growing upwards, it doesn't matter. Oh my God, I snapped. I'm so sorry, I snapped my elbow. Blame my elbow, I snapped one of the leaves. Yeah, the lower leaves are gonna keep dying off, and they cannot be overwatered, by the way. They do shed leaves and yellow them when you are underwatering them. Overwatering, I mean. And in terms of underwatering, I haven't really had that issue, but they may give you these crispy tips if you underwater them. I actually water this every day. Again, first of all, these plants are actually older. They're a little bit root bound, most likely, and in terracotta pot, and living outdoors. If this was indoors, I would not water it that often. I would actually have to moisture probe them every day. But yeah, other than that, it's happy outside. It's actually, it does well inside too if you have some good light, but again, you just want to be mindful of the watering if you are indoors. And I do fertilize this lightly, and I've never had any pest issues with this plant. And it's actually very beautiful with furniture. So if you want to, am I off screen? Like when I do this, I don't know. I feel like I'm off screen, sorry. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how to figure out this filming situation. Yeah, I actually highly recommend this plant. If you have lower light, get the green form, don't get the variegated, and this will grow into a tree. So yeah. All right, so I'm down to my last plant here. And here is actually the Sansevieria, I was gonna say Dracaena. And this is a propagate. So I got one, it was a little bit bigger, and I did separate it. I put one in the studio, I gave them one to a friend. And this is very easy to care for. And this one, I particularly love the growth pattern. Look, it's like exploding, it's like fireworks coming at you. And it's grown a branch sideways, and this is actually over the pot, this bit right here, which is really wild. I really love this plant. And this new vine here has given me more green than yellow variegation, because I've been sticking this into lower light by the koi fish pond. And also this new leaf is getting less variegated, which means that I should consider having him in a brighter spot. They can take full sun, by the way, but you do have to train them to take full sun. Other than that, I think I don't need to go through Sansevieria care with you guys because it's so easy. The only way that you can kill them is actually by overwatering them. So just be mindful of that. And this is in a terracotta pot with, again, I keep repeating that, terracotta pot, fast draining soil, and very, very root bound because this is an older plant. When it was younger, I would water it less, but now that it's older, whenever I walk by and I look at the topsoil and it's dry, I don't even test it anymore, I just pour water at it. And it seems to like that. But again, if it's a younger plant, if it's a bigger pot, if it's a plastic pot, you want to be mindful before you water. You want to make sure that it's bone dry between watering. So I want to take this time to share with you some of my philosophies and thoughts about plants and what they've taught me over the course of the year that I've had them, which is a very short amount of time. First of all, do your research. Whether it's cooking or any kinds of skills that you may acquire, like botany, sewing, you can actually create a lot of beautiful things as long as you do your research right, and you take the time to just actually do it. Take the dive. Anything is possible in this world if you give it time. And I guess that's my next point, is that time heals everything. So give it time. So that's my quote for you guys. A lot of the times, like we have broken relationships, or we have fallout with people, or we get sick sometimes. Just keep in mind that actually, if you're patient, things usually get better. So be patient with yourself, with other people, and again, give it time. Things do get better, and we become better people. And our plants are always growing if you give it time and the proper care. And plants actually make our living space a lot more livable. They beautify our space. They do clean the air to some degree, although not as much as we would like to think. But we become more in tune with our living conditions, our geographical locations, our sun movements, our winds, our rains. So these are the things that as human beings, I think it's important for us to understand because it makes us more attuned with the environment. Again, it also gives us something to talk about with people. We just become smarter, right, when we are aware of what's going on around us. And plants are one way that we can learn about our environment. And speaking about environments, a lot of the natural habitat for these plants are actually in decline, and we are to blame for that. And a lot of the species are becoming endangered or even extinct in their natural habitats. And the fact that we can grow them in the pots in our homes, and the fact that we can propagate and multiply them and share them with people, it's a way of species conservation that I believe is important, and all of us should take part in that to some degree. Of course, not all of us has that kind of that level of commitment, but any little bit helps, and just create that awareness is quite important, I think. It teaches us responsibility to our environment, to our natural world, which we sometimes forget because we spend so much time on social media, on our work, on our businesses. So do take some time and effort to learn about plant care and propagation, and do share them with people around you that you love, and spread that plant love. And another important lesson that plants have taught me is to be a more compassionate human being, to put others' needs above my own, to know that every living thing have their own needs, and if you can fulfill that, they will thrive in your home. If you sometimes have to get out of your way to help them, and this applies to everything. Like, you can read a lot of the signs, like what are droopy leaves, what are yellowing leaves, and what is sun stress, and things like that. For example, one of the things that I taught a lot in my light video is that when we look at a plant, we think that it's getting enough light, it's getting bright light. However, if you put your eyes where the leaves are, you'll realize that sometimes that plant is actually suffering, it's not getting light, because you're not seeing what the plant is seeing. You're only seeing what you're seeing or what you want to see. There's a lot of people who think, oh, I have my plants in this spot and it looks bright, when in actuality, they're suffering. So it teaches us to be compassionate, to see other people's sufferings or other people's success from their view, because everybody has a different view that's outside of your own. And this hobby actually taught me a lot about diversity, that there are so many plants and so many environments around the world, and it's a beautiful thing. And there are so many different types of people, and basically we want to try to replicate that in our home where possible. And this diversity is important because they all have symbiotic relationship with the animals and also the environment that they're from, such as this Dischidia, which is known as the ant plant because it has a symbiotic relationship with ants. So everything is important, everything is related, that we're all connected as living things. And plants teach us to slow down, to appreciate the finer things in life. There are a lot of things going on in our world, whether it's a new leaf or a new variegation, that we sometimes are too busy to notice, but they're happening all around us. There's beauty all around us. So it's taught me to slow down and appreciate the little things and look at the details. And it'll tell you a lot about history, about evolution, because a lot of the plants actually evolve these physical features over a long period of time, and it's just a beautiful thing to witness. And plants actually teach us a lot about forgiveness. Sometimes we make mistakes with plant care and we kill the plant. We have to forgive ourselves when that happens, because we have to learn from our mistakes, and if we try again, I guarantee you that you will be able to keep that plant alive. And in some cases, the plants that have died off will come back. Even if it's dead to a stump and all you have is an empty pot with soil, if you give it some time, such as in this Caladium, they will come back, they will forgive you. So forgiveness is an important quality to have in human beings, and I started to notice that there are a lot of people who are very spiteful, who can't move past their own mistakes or other people's mistakes, and they don't grow. These people, they can't become better people and learn, and I don't want to insult people, but I think one of the keys to success is to be able to forgive, to learn from mistakes, and to keep trying over and over again. And it's actually a wonderful feeling to be able to care for something that cannot care for itself. It gives us a sense of responsibility and discipline like no others. In this world, there are actually a lot of bullies, a lot of, I don't want to say weaker people or things, but there are a lot of cases where a lot of living things cannot fend for themselves, and they do need our help, and they do deserve a place in this world, a place that is full of kindness and patience and understanding. So yeah, these plants actually got me started on my journey, and I'm eternally grateful for them. I can't wait to see them grow even more in my space. I know that I have a lot of weird plants now, like rare aeroids, orchids, that have very different care, and I do love them. I love all my plants basically, but these will always have a special place in my heart, and I'm really thankful for this episode that I can put out so I can immortalize them forever on YouTube. So what are the plants that started your journey? Please comment down below. I think it'll be interesting for us to see. Maybe they're sort of easier to care for plants, or maybe there are plant mistakes. Do share with me your experience. Meanwhile, do take care and stay safe. I will see you in the next episode. Bye.